I'm going to give a quick introduction to a few of the things that we have happening with the CASE program. I'm also going to focus on getting to let Jensen introduce himself. Jensen is our mystery guest for today, and Jensen is going to be walking through the case, so I'm really excited to have him here and joining. And then we're going to dive into the case. We're going to spend 30 minutes on the case. At the end, I'm going to spend some time debriefing with Jensen, and then we'll take some questions from you guys. So we are really excited to have you here today, and we're excited to be offering this live case. Just in case you don't know a little bit about what MC does, we have 3 things that are coming up pretty soon that we wanted to introduce you to. The first one, they're all on the slide. The first one is a September Black Belt cohort. It's 8 total hours of individual coaching sessions, resume and cover letter edits, and 4 group sessions that are focused in September. In addition, you get access to all of our intensives. We do an intensive every month, and we have one coming up called Case Partner Premium in September. So speaking of Case Partner Premium, if you don't want to join Black Belt, but you just want some case practice like this one, Case Partner Premium is an opportunity to get paired together with another case partner who's practicing. We provide the cases, we provide a debrief, and you get some free access to the management consulted case bank. So we do have limited spaces for it. You can sign up at that tiny URL, Case Partner Premium, and it's happening next week in the evenings. So we really hope that you guys can join us for that. The third thing that we're doing is a program called Strategy Sprints. We've done it already a number of times, and this year we're done for 2020, but we have one that's happening in January 2021. So if you are interested in doing that, you can just sign up on the wait list. We haven't opened registration for it yet. All right, so my colleague Japeth is going to be putting those links into the chat bar. And so without further ado, Jensen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So just let everybody know who you are, what level you are, what level of prep you're at right now, and why you're excited to do the case today.
Sounds great. So thank you so much. My name is Jensen. I'm currently an analyst at Analysis Group, an academic consulting firm where I work mostly in healthcare and tech spaces. And I also work in our analyst recruiting committee and also lead AG Pride, which is our LGBTQ+ employee group as well at the firm. And in terms of my case prep, I am about 30 cases in, and I'm also a Black Belt cohort member as well. So yeah, and I'm here because of a moment of bravery that just came over me during a call with Jenny Ray and just decided to volunteer. And then, yeah, too late to withdraw, so I'm here, but I'm actually really excited and a bit nervous as well, but we'll see how it plays out.
So exciting. Okay, amazing. Well, we're so excited to have you. I hope that that moment of bravery carries through during the case today. And we're going to get to see a lot of really cool stuff from you. So what I'll do is I'm going to pull up the case from my side. Nobody is going to be able to see this, including you. It's just going to be me. I'm going to run the case today in a BCG style. And so you are going to be in charge of using your structure to navigate with me through the case. The case has a lot of really good, robust information, and I think that you'll find the problem kind of fun and relevant with some of the things that we've been dealing with right now. So, Jensen, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Awesome. I am going to start our clock as I begin the background of the case. Okay? Goody. So here we go. Our client is a large B2B and B2C housewares and home furnishings retailer. We'll call them Furnazon. It sells over 200,000 SKUs of product manufactured by over 1,000 niche brands. The products featured on the site are all designed by up-and-coming European and North American artisans, but are manufactured in runs of at least 10,000 units. One of the sales channels is email, through which it sells a selection of products to customers. The company is headquartered in the US, and it has logistics capabilities to deliver its goods to 8 countries in North America and Europe. Despite many quick early wins as a business, growth has slowed. To combat slowing growth in the US, the company started offering aggressive price promotions on first-time purchases. The purchases are sent by email, but tied to a customer's phone number, using 2-factor authentication to attempt to ensure the customer only uses the promotion once. In its first 12 months, the campaign has seemed like a winner. It produced very high response rates. However, management is concerned because profitability has continued to decline. We've been called in to analyze the promotional campaign and determine what, if anything, the client should do to improve its effectiveness. Do you have any questions about the background?
Yeah, so before I dive into my questions, could I just run through what I just noted down to see if I got everything right?
Absolutely.
So we have a B2B, B2C houseware firm called Firmazon, and they have about 20,000 SKUs, 1,000 niche brands. So really big, all sorts of things kind of clients here. And they sell mostly through emails to the US and Europe as well. They've been experiencing slow growth, so they offer this kind of first-time purchase promotions through emails, but also having this phone authentication, phone authentication two-phase method that they do it through. They are still worried about how this seems to work well at first, but now slowing down, and they want to for us to help to see how to figure this out. Maybe turn this over.
Absolutely. I think you caught everything. The only thing, Jensen, that I want to make sure we got is that there are 200,000 SKUs of product. I don't know what number you said, but I feel like it might not have been that. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page about that one.
Definitely. No, thank you so much for that. So I have a few questions before I start diving into this case. My first question is with regards to this idea of a slow growth and what the objective is. I want to clarify that a little bit. I want to, so are they looking at a certain number that they're targeting to, do they want to turn this into from a negative to positive profit, or what are we looking at here?
So, actually we don't have any information yet about profitability, but we're of course always interested in that, especially if we feel like we've grown to a place that we're satisfied with that. In terms of growth, I wouldn't say that we have targets, but definitely reversing the decline in profitability would be important to us. Back to positive.
Reverse and decline. Sounds good. And just to make sure, this decline has been happening after the 12-month campaign. So we're at the end of this 12-month right now. So we're looking at.
Exactly.
And then I have another question with regards to the business model a little bit. So they sell through emails, and then they have this phone authentication-ish kind of method here. And I want to dig deeper into what that actually means. So by selling through emails, you mean that they do all their promotions through email, or does that mean that they ask people to send in prices or things like that? I don't think that's like way too 2000, but maybe.
So 2000, yeah. No, this is an e-commerce retailer. That's a great differentiating question. And so one of their primary sales channels that we're using, which could also be called a marketing channel, is just that direct email for consumers. But the primary focus of the email is to bring them back to the website. And so we have a website that houses all of the information that's like this.
Sounds good. And then the last question is just what I do of these 2,000 SKUs, 1,000 niche brands, and then 10,000 units. So I want to get to know what exactly does SKUs mean versus 10,000 unit sell.
Totally. Yeah. So the batches of each product are in 10,000 unit batches, right? So we're not selling like 3 lamps of this kind and 11 of something. Every time we would put in an order, it would be for this very large manufacturing run. Gotcha. But their 200,000 SKUs are unique, different products, right? So a different tablecloth would be one SKU. If we had that in 5 colors, each one of those would be a separate SKU. And so the SKU is to represent an individual product in an individual color.
Sounds great. And I think those will be all my questions to start with. And I'm ready to just dive in to figure out how to reverse the trend and decline in growth for this firm. Can I take a few moments to start to brainstorm my thoughts?
Yes, take your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think I have kind of a structure going on here. Could I go through with you about all the buckets I have to tackle this issue?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so we have a problem of declining growth in revenue or in sales in general, and and in order to tackle that, I think there is definitely two things that we should look at here. Of course, the first most important thing is to look at revenue and whether how our revenue has been affected, and then the other bucket I want to look at is cost as well, because even though it's a slow growth in revenue, if that is associated with a significant decrease in cost, that will be, I guess, is fine as well. But yeah, we want to look at both things and see how the business is doing in general, even though revenue is our main concern. So with regards to the bucket within revenue here, I'm going very classic of looking at quantity and price. But with regards to quantity, I want to segment it a little bit more into looking at whether it's by the markets that we're targeting, so either in Europe, in US, or in other countries in Europe. But more importantly, I want to look at our quantity sold pre and post offering this kind of promotion strategy, because I think this is like a huge, big change that we made that would have impacted our revenue a lot. And the same with price as well. So price, I want to look at kind of our price pre and post this offering this promotion to see what we sold at. And also on top of that, I want to look at somewhat of the market trend as well to see if there's things that happen with the market. So if there is a decline in the market and overall, then it's pretty much out of our control, and there's not much going on that we can do about it. On top of that, and I think kind of pervading this question is of a price is also, I guess, should have added another bucket, but this is fine too. Of looking at here in terms of price compared to other things going on in the economy. So if there's flow in the economy, then for example, if we're looking at right now COVID, then I'm sure people might be less likely to purchase niche brands, furnitures or things like this of this nature. So that will be everything within the revenue bucket. In the cost bucket, it's less important, as I mentioned, but we still want to look at it. So in terms of fixed costs, we want to look at how much more cost we're spending to roll out this promotion strategies and email marketing campaign or all of that. And also this two-phase authentication problem here, to see what's the deal with that and how much we're spending on it. And then variable costs as well, so to see if there's anything that happened with our product chain in general. So those would be all the things that I would look at. But of course, I would love to start with kind of the revenue issue, especially with regards to the quantities that we're selling, because it seems like a decline in growth in sales is more directly associated with quantity, first of all. So with that, unless you have any other preferences.
No, I think that sounds great. Jensen, I do just want to let you know that I have some data for you, but I'll just rely on what you're interested in. If I don't have data, it doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means that we're not going to consider it as a part of what we're talking about in the case. And so I'll ask you just to lead me through the data that you're looking for. And if I've got data on the things that you're looking for, I'll share it with you.
Definitely. So first, looking at the quantity of the products sold, I would love to look at the quantity of the products sold in the past 12 months and before that as well. So the past 12 months has been the period after we roll out the promotion, but before that as well, to see what the change is because of this promotion. So do we have any data on that?
So I don't have data on that directly. I do have some data that could be a little bit related to that. So I have the percentage of response rates from the promotion, and that might be helpful in kind of understanding, but I actually don't have the total volume. The response rate, in general, a response rate of 2% to a direct marketing campaign of this type is considered super successful. Mm-hmm. Amazingly, 8% of households who received this promotional email are taking advantage of the promotion and making a purchase within the first year.
Taking advantage, that's awesome. So we have 8% taking advantage of this, and 2% is already successful, which is a great thing to hear. So I do want to, in that case then, since we mentioned this issue of a two-phase authentication problem, and since we are looking at this, the success rate of this, I wonder if we have any studies or qualitative interviews or anything like that of that nature to see how this two-phase authentication issue is affecting this. because yeah, it seems a little bit complicated for me just hearing about it. So yeah.
Yeah, it does. I can explain it a little bit more. The two-factor authentication, we use it because people often have 7 different emails, but only 1 phone number. And so it's an easier way to make sure that they're not redeeming this coupon multiple times. And one of the, so basically like that's why we use it. Two-factor authentication is the kind of thing that happens when you try to log in somewhere and they say, we just sent a code to your wherever. And so this would be used through SMS. So you would, send a message to them, or you would be trying to buy, you'd have to put in your phone number. It would send you a message to that phone number, and then they're capturing that is your phone number for it. That 8% of the numbers is actually the full redemption. So that includes everyone that goes through that two-factor authentication process, and it excludes anyone who drops off because of it.
Gotcha. That sounds really great. Yeah, good system. Yeah, in that case, I wonder if so we currently have what we have right now. We're looking at revenue, and we have kind of data on the response rate to our promotion campaign. Is there and this is kind of the main way that we're selling our products through this promotion through this email channel.
There are definitely others as well, but this one is a primary one for us.
Definitely. Yeah, and on that note, I kind of want to dig deeper into this since it's the main channel and see if we have any demographic data on who's taking advantage of this, or any trends at all that we observe from when it started versus where it is right now.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I do have some data on that. So the target customers for the promotion tend to be young adults that live in suburban and urban locations, not usually rural locations. And they skew college educated. They are generally apartment, not house dwellers. And they usually live alone with a small number of roommates or with their significant others. In addition, they move on average every 1.5 years.
Move every 1.5 year, and then, yep, roommates. Okay, so I think, yeah, this makes a lot of sense than just looking at this kind of moving rate, because just reasoning it out to myself, it seems like when we roll out this campaign, and my hypothesis is that people see this campaign and start taking to it, but then they just keep staying in their apartments, and of course they've already furnished one, so they really do it. So maybe if we wait until another, not just 12 months, but 18 months, and maybe there will be another wave of buying, even though there's not a sale associated to it. So it might be.
I actually have data on that for you, Jensen, if you want data on it. Do you want data on that?
Oh, I would love data on that.
Okay, amazing. So the lifetime value of the furniture is 6 years. What I mean by that is that this isn't the kind of furniture that you're going to pass on to your grandchildren someday. This is the kind of furniture that you use for a little while and then you kind of don't use it forever. But the thing that's tied to what you just said is that we do find that these customers that buy from us often will repeat their purchase. And those repeat customers tend to purchase from us for up to 3 years. After 3 years, they really do not purchase anymore.
We'll purchase up to 3 years. Sounds good. So, okay, so we have kind of a predicament here, because we do have this campaign that's been around in the past 12 months, where people buy a lot of things that will last for 6 years, but their repurchase rate is only up to 3 years. So they definitely would not buy the same kind of products anymore. And especially, they might buy different things, especially when they move every 1.5 years as well. So on that note, I think, one thing that just qualitatively, I'm just thinking a lot right now is that we might see a resurgence in people buying at that 1.5 years mark. But then on that, I think we might have to do more look into the customers or customer surveys, or look into what kind of products they've bought to see, what they will buy again in the future.
What kind of data would you want on that? What would be helpful in the clearest and simplest way to help us kind of identify what you're looking for here?
I think just sales data, what people bought would be.
Is what they bought the big driver? Is there something else that you're looking for?
What they bought versus Hmm. What they bought. No, it's not what they bought. That's the same main driver. I think what they bought, the rate of buying what the promotion offered, and then people buying, just like buying the products with that promotion would be great.
Yeah, okay, great. So I have that for you.
Oh,
let,
perfect.
let me give you that detail. So
Thank you.
of the clients, I mentioned before that 8% purchase in the first year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then of that, 20% of those clients, 20% of the 8%
Mm-hmm.
repurchase in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then of that 20%, 50% of those repurchase in year 3.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. Okay, so if 8% responding to the email chain and then 20% repurchase in the next year, even though they don't get to take advantage of the same promotions anymore, and
Right?
then 50% still purchase in year 3. So what we have here is that I think it gives us kind of the kind of this gauge into how effective this one-time promotion is in the long run of the life cycle of a consumer for our product. Considering the return rate will be 20% without a promotion and then 50% in the next year as well after that. So on that note, I kind of want, I don't know if we have more kind of like exact numbers, so whether the quantity number or the average price numbers, they can actually go into doing some calculations on this to see if everything pays off or yeah, is worth it or not.
I do. And actually, Jensen, I've got details on this. I have details on the value of the promotion to us. And then I also have details on a potential alternative. And so I'd actually love to look at the numbers for both of them and see if there's any insights that we can draw out of them. Can I give you some more of those numbers?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, amazing. So the average contribution of the first year of activity is $15. Let me explain what that contribution means. Contribution is the retail price minus the cost of goods, minus the cost of marketing, minus the discount. Okay, the discount that we're giving is $100.
Wow.
In year 2 and year 3, the contribution is $50.
Yep.
So my question to you is, across the entire pool of everyone that we are marketing to and offering this to, what would you say the total contribution is for these folks?
Definitely. And you mentioned that year 2 is $50. Is that minus all costs as well? Average contribution?
Yep. So it's evaluated the same way. I do think that it's important to note that in year 1, that that amount, the contribution, represents the cost of all marketing, because we obviously only have 8% that are buying, and there is a cost for everyone. So that's why we're interested in knowing what the total contribution would be here.
Yep. And
how would you
so
lay this out?
I was just wondering if there's also that 50% that purchases in year 3 as well. So I wonder what the average contribution for those are, because we only have data for year 2.
For sure, it's the same as year 2. So it's 50 in year 2, 50 in year 3.
Sounds good. Perfect. So the way I would lay this out of how I would approach this math is just to, I think because we're looking at the cost of marketing for the total, kind of the whole pool of everyone, I might want to take a more macro look at this and look at the total contributions for every customers for first year, and then total contributions for everyone for year 2, and then for year 3, and then minus all costs for all years. So we can leave out those costs of marketing that significantly increase in the first year out of the questions for the first year, but then not consider that in the next few years.
Good. All of those costs are actually already included in the contribution. So just to make it one step easier, that contribution includes even the marketing costs of the first year.
Sounds good. So we currently have average contribution of first year, which is $50, and then we offer this $100 promotion.
So actually you don't have to do any math on that, because that 15, it's 1.5, just to make sure that's clear, 1.5 in the first year. That 15 is inclusive of that $100 number.
Gotcha. And for year 2, the average contribution is $50. But yeah, it's also has minus all kind of costs as well. Yeah. So yeah, 15 plus 50, and then plus another 50 as well. That will be 115 for all 3 years for one customers. For the total contributions for our customers for all 3 years.
So that would be for a single customer if they went the whole way through. How do we weight that by our total customer pool to figure out what the actual value is?
Oh, gotcha. Because we have only 20% who will repurchase in year 2. So I think for the total pool, it will be 20% of this $50 for the second year, which would be about $10. Just weight it out for second year. And then 50% of that for year 3 as well, which would be 50% of that $10 average contribution. So I think it will be about $5 for year 3. So 15 plus 20 plus 10 plus 5 would be $30 for estimate total contributions for customers throughout their life year.
Okay, what do we think about that?
I think this would be very low considering we're offering a discount of $100. And I'm sure, so I mean, so I wonder what the elasticity would be if we try to cut less of the promotions or anything like that, to see if we can maybe offer only $90 discount, but we get $45 total contributions or something like that.
Great. Okay, well, we do have an alternative that we wanted to look at, as I mentioned. So the client estimates that it could achieve a 3% response rate at the start if the amount of the initial discount was lowered to $20. It also estimates that the number, not the rate, but the number of repeat purchasers in subsequent years would be the same as it is currently. So the percentages of that initial percentage would remain the same, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
The contribution in subsequent years, in years 2 and year 3, would also be the same.
Wow, yes, this is good. So instead of offering $100 discount, they're offering only $20 discount. And then with that, they get 3% response rate instead of 8% response rate. So I guess in comparing this 3% to 8%, I will able to get the ratio between the total amount of customers among the 2 groups, and then use that percentage to see what the kind of total contributions that we would get out of that would be. So 3% compared to 8% is 3/8. And then 3/8, and then I will impose that upon the kind of total contribution for all customers on average that we got for the $30. So that would be 30 times 3/8.
340 participants in the meeting.
And actually, by the way, Jensen, just something that might be really helpful here is that we could actually identify the number of the contribution. I have it for the second scenario. So rather than doing some math on it, it's $35.
Oh, $35. Gotcha. So thank you so much for giving that number. So $35 compared to so we have $35 total contributions right now, after giving $20 versus $100 discount. Let me just gather all my number out here. $20 discount, and then we get $35 contribution. Good. And then on the other side, and then we have 3% response rate. And then on the other side, we have 8% response rate, $100 discount, and then $30 average contribution. So in order
35. So sorry, I don't think that those numbers didn't line up to what I have. Let me just double check them. 8% response rate for the $100, but we don't have to really factor in the $100 in this math. That's just a fact for the case. The $15, the $15 is for the purchase contribution. Okay, for the
yeah.
first one, and then in the second one, it's $35 and a 3% response rate.
Gotcha. So $30, I mean $15 for the first group. That is throughout the whole life year, or just the first year? I think I calculated
30.
I got 30.
So years 2 and 3 actually remain the same. So it's just in year 1 that it's different. 35 is different.
Gotcha. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so looking at this, I think I will calculate the 8% compared to 3%, and then $15 compared to $35. And yeah, so 3/8 versus 15 over 35.
And tell me why you're doing this math here, Jensen. Just keep me in the loop.
So I'm just calculating what kind of I guess for the first year, what would be the average kind of, so I'm getting,
We're trying to figure out how to factor in that 8% and the 3%, right?
Yeah, trying to
how do we account for the difference in that? Let me give you a hint. And this will actually, we'll kind of have to go back a little bit to the last problem, but it won't be that long to do that. What we should do is take the 8% of the 15 and then take the 3% of the 35 as your baseline number. So rather than starting at 35 in the beginning, start with that. And then instead of giving me 20% of the second year, give me 20% of 8% of the second year.
20% of 8%.
Does that make sense? So we'll weight the first year by the percentage that buys to bring that number down in the first place.
Okay.
Because what you found me was still the lifetime value of an actual purchaser, not the lifetime value of our population, right?
Gotcha.
And so I think that's what we were missing here. So if we can weigh that in, then that would be great.
Yeah, so 8% of $15, that would be 15 times 0.08. Yeah, which is 15 times 0.08. 15 times 8 would be 120. Takes out 20. That would be 0.12. Divided 100.
You're right before.
No, actually, no, 1.2.
Yeah, there you go.
$1.2. Yeah, $1.2 dollars. And then we take 20% of that to get what they get in year 2. What we get in year 2, which would be 1.2 divided by 5. That would be.
So wait, let's make sure we've got that. So we take 20% of the 8% in year 2, not 20% of the $1.20, because remember we have now a different contribution number.
So we have 20% of 8%, which is. So so for me, I was thinking if we get the total number and then because we year 2 contribution is $50 instead.
Exactly.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So 8% and then 20% of 8%, that would be 8 divided by 5, and that would be 1.6%. 1.6% and $50. The 1.6% of $50, that would be 1.6 times 50. Oh yeah, go up. That would be 0.8.
Perfect.
Dollars. And then year 3 is 50% of the 20%. So even 50% of 1.6, which is 0.8%. And 0.8% of also $50. So it's just half of what we get for the year 2, which is 0.4.
Perfect.
So 1.2 plus 0.8 plus 0.4, which is 2.4. Okay, and I'll do the same for the other group. I mean, for the alternative quickly. So 3% of $35 for the first year. So that would be 35 times 3 divided by 100. That would be 1.05. $1.05 dollars for the first year, and then year two that would be that year two that would be 20% of 3%. So that would be 3%.
I have good news for you. It's actually not 20% of 3% because we actually keep the same rate that we did in the first one. So you can just keep the same numbers that we did in the first one.
Oh, perfect. Then yeah, we have 0.4, and then yeah, we have 0.8 as well. So overall, with this, we have 1.2 plus 1.05, so 2.25.
What do we think about this, Jensen?
This is really, I think these are good numbers. I think, yeah, these are good numbers, but yeah, then with all taken into considerations, I still think that the first, yeah, the current options that we're doing is optimal based on the number. So we can kind of disregard.
It absolutely seems that way. Yeah. However, I'm going to push you just into a little bit of brainstorming, right? We're concerned that even though this number looks better, there may be some ancillary factors about either, I don't know, we don't know what it might be, something that we're not factoring in about the difference between a $100 promotion, the message of that, and the $20 promotion. So I think your recommendation of keeping the option seems reasonable. However, what else should we be thinking about or factoring in that could be driving down profitability, whether with this promotion or without?
Yeah, so I think I think it's the promotion that we're offering might affect a few different things, and I think the first thing that I want to look at, the first bucket, is kind of the perception of the brand. Perception of the brand, and yeah, and also we've already mentioned that the rates of customers following up will be the same in the existing pool of customers, so that's fine. So among the perception of the brand, I want to look at kind of what kind of market we're competing in with this promotion that we're offering. So so if we're offering this $100 discount, that might give the impression that we're competing in a market for furnitures or for goods that are less luxury or yeah, or lower quality, versus offering this $20 discount might offer, yeah, might make us closer to the actual price of the product from the purchaser, and in that way it will yeah, just allow it to compete in a different market. Also, it might give the impression that's for customers, but also in the side of the people that we're buying from, so the niche brands that we're buying from, it might affect our kind of negotiating powers on what price that we're buying these products at. So for example, if we're having to buy these products and yeah, selling them with significant discount, that might send the impression to these manufacturers that we're not able to sell these products effectively, and therefore they will not, yeah, continue their partnership with us anymore. So yeah, those are the two things in terms of how it would affect our relationship with customers and manufacturers.
Love it. Thanks, Jensen. Well, we've run out of time, and our CEO has a quick pass that they make of us in the hallway. They want an update. Can you give us a quick update of where we are in the case so far and what else you'd like to do?
Yeah, so it's great running into you. We've run some numbers on the things that we've run some calculations on the numbers that you've given us, and we've come to the conclusion that we are fine with sticking with the current options or promotions that we're doing, and instead of the alternative. However, we might want to look into that further to see what implications of that would be with regard to perceptions of the brand by customers and also by the manufacturers as well. So nitty-gritty details, the current plan would give us a bit more of money per customers than with the alternative plan, even though we give yeah, higher discount for this one. However, things that we have not looked at would be some qualitative issues with regard to whether offering this significant discount would affect brand awareness, whether we'll be competing at a different market for less luxury goods, and also our negotiating powers with our partners. So for those matters, we would love to conduct more interviews or more qualitative work to see what, to get to the bottom of the issue. But that will be the update right now. And for now, just stick with the option that we're going with for promotions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jensen. And congratulations, we're done with the case. Well done.
Thank you.
Are you sweating? How do you feel? How do you feel?
I feel okay. I think I came in with a sea of confidence that waned significantly by the half point of it. But yeah, I think the math is fine once I figured out what to actually do, because I'm not afraid of doing math. I'm just afraid of not knowing what to calculate. Yeah. So
yeah.
that took me up a little bit.
So I want to give you kind of my overall takeaway on the big pro and the big con. Okay. So yeah. I feel like your big pro was I saw a 110% what I call the game factor. Like whenever I gave you data or asked you to do something, you were like, what a great idea. Like yeah. You were into it. And I want people on the call to really like focus more on that than on the analytics or the tactics that we went through, because ultimately that's the game changer. That's what makes me hire you in the second round. Okay. In the first round, I want structure and tactics, and I need a different level of insights than where you were. So I felt like there was insight gaps in some of what we were talking about, and I really want to focus on that. So yeah. I'm going to go back through each piece of the case as a quick debrief for you, just tell you what I was seeing, what I was thinking as I was going through it, and and you know, kind of emphasize the things that I would want you to do differently as you're continuing your case prep, because I know you've got a little ways to go, and I'm excited to see where you go from here. So the first thing is that at the beginning, I thought you asked some really good clarifying questions, right? What is the actual tactic of this business? None of them were new data specifically, except you asked a little bit about growth targets, and I kind of said, you know, as much as we can, we want to return to profitability. You know, I think you can generally make the assumption that we are not going to be withholding data from you guys in a McKinsey, Bain, or BCG interview. There could be nuances for other firms, but for the most part, right, really focus your beginning questions on understanding the channel, the problem, the you know, the product, right? Some of those things, and just really understanding that. So the question about SKUs, great clarifying question. Question about the numbers. I really felt like you got it at the beginning of the case, and it only took you about 3.5 minutes, which is textbook. That's like amazing, right? Up to 4 minutes for the opening of the case. So your full opening was 3.5. Well done. Also, when you went into your structuring, you were 1 minute and 36 seconds, which was pretty good. But I did feel like your structure came across a little weak. And then interestingly, it took you 3.5 minutes to present your structure afterwards. And so that imbalance, I think, was reflective of the fact that you could have spent a little bit more time going a bit deeper, maybe even spending just a second numbering your structure. I wish you could see my paper. These are my notes about your structure. There's like lots of arrows and other things, because I was having a hard time following you. And in a virtual environment, which we're going to be in potentially for a little while, you really need to make sure that you very clearly articulate. And I wouldn't want you to start with, you kind of spent almost a minute talking about like, this is a declining growth problem, which it wasn't really, actually. It was a declining profitability problem was the bigger problem, right? Slowing growth, but declining profitability was the big problem here. And then you were like, and then it's revenue and costs. And then we finally got down to like the lower category of buckets. And so I just start with like that level that you're going to then sub the data underneath, and then make sure you're giving me an incredibly clear numbered piece of data as you were going through each one. And so I just, it wasn't super clear to me exactly like what structure we were operating in, or exactly where we were going to go inside the case. So I felt like that was one big growth area. And that's really where the insight gaps, I think, began. Because at the beginning, what we're trying to figure out essentially is like, is this promotional campaign driving the profit decline or not? Right? That was really, I think, the fundamental question. And therefore, we're going to have to evaluate whether it's profitable or not profitable. And so I would have liked for you to go one level deeper at the beginning to the tactics that we got into later in the case of measuring the profitability of this actual campaign, right? And I think if you would use your structure for that, then we would have gotten there more quickly. Okay? Now, I do want to commend you, because after that, you went through a series of really only 3 questions to get us into the math. And I, like, when you said, I'm not afraid of numbers, I felt that from you. I saw that. I felt that you wanted to get to the numbers. I thought you were asking very good questions. When I gave you the numbers, you didn't insight for me either though. So again, like what you were really good at was getting to the numbers, and you only asked 3 questions to get there. What you weren't great at was when I gave you the numbers, giving me the insight. Like $100 as an initial like offer is ridiculously high, right? And I would have wanted you to kind of weave in some insight as we're going through it. Like that seems really high. I'm wondering if this is even a profitable prospect for them. And so you were asking the right questions, but not interpreting the data in a way that kind of would have added that value to me. Right?
Gotcha.
Then when we got into the data, I actually really liked the way that you laid it out. And that first step, in this case, I've done it a number of times. It's not super clear whether we're supposed to wait the first step or not wait the first step. We really only figure that out oftentimes when we get to the second step. And so I felt super comfortable with your analytics. I felt like I could trust you. You had your math numbers were solid. Yeah, the one time you were like playing around with the decimals a little bit, and I was just like, we can just get there. You know, I know you're fine. But I was doing that because I made the assessment pretty early on that I did not feel like math was going to be a flaw or a challenge for you. I felt like if I gave you a spreadsheet, you'd be able to figure it out. What I was looking for though, again, was like when you came up with the insights, number 1 is higher, but it's really close. Number 2, and these numbers are undiscounted as well. Number 2 has a much higher take in the first year. And so, you know, one of the benefits of that when we're looking at that is that actually, you know, in the first year, we have this like higher revenue per customer. So we also have only projections for option number 2. And so you said, you know, kind of stick with number 1. I don't think that's the problem. I think that is the level 1 insight here. But I think that there's a level 2 insight, which is like the second one is pretty close. It might be worth testing. It might be worth seeing if we actually get a higher rate of return in year 2 and 3, because maybe we're attracting better customers. Maybe we're attracting better customers at higher margins. And so that's really where I pushed you to on the final creative question, right? Which is like, what if the customers that we're getting are actually not ideal in the long run using this promotion, right? And so you broke it down into 4 areas, but your 4 areas were all at one level. I would have rather had 3 areas with some subcategories underneath them to really push us into that place where we were evaluating that. And then your conclusion was super solid. It had all 3 pieces: the recap, the recommendation, and the kind of overview of the end part of the case. It was almost like a minute and a half, which is great. Minute and a half to 2 minutes is perfect. Your creative question was under 3 minutes, also bueno. So, you know, this was a BCG style case, which feels really hard because you have to find the data first before you get to use it. But overall, if that was a first round, I would have been like, I think Jensen can do the job. In a second round, I couldn't have passed you because the insight piece was missing. And so I don't think it was a shoo-in for either one, but I really think that it's not that far for you between where you are to where you need to go. So what questions do you have for me?
I think, no, that was super great. I think I got tripped up definitely a little bit from the start with the kind of structuring of the case, because I'm looking at the profitability of the whole firm in general, but not just the part of this marketing campaign.
Right. So I'm throwing both of those at you and trying to see, right, how big picture can you stay, but also focus on like the specific question at hand.
Yeah, and I think, it definitely tripped me up with like the amount of information, the data was given at the beginning. I was like, okay, 200,000 SKUs, that's like, that must mean something, right? Because especially you corrected me on it as well. You're like, no, it's not 2,000, it's 200,000, just making sure you got that right. It's like, this must be
like, whoa, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that tripped me up a little bit because I was thinking big picture, the whole thing, not just this campaign. But yeah, no, I think everything else makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I don't have any questions. I enjoy the case a lot.
Let me show you. That's so good. Let me show you something here, which is just like the kind of the data that I was working off of, right? And so in a BCG case, I'm going to have some options. What I did was I italicized the things that you asked me for. Okay. What I really liked is that there was actually a lot of other information that you did not need to solve the case that would have been contextual that you could have asked me for. And I've put it here together, but it doesn't actually really matter. And there were a couple of questions that I could have asked you, but didn't need to. And so, like I said, that 3 steps, those 3 questions that you asked me got us to those numbers. Now, some of them you didn't ask me, but I gave you, and there really wasn't a clear way for us to do that unless I gave them to you. That wasn't a fault of yours. That was me needing to give you the information because there are 10 different ways that we could actually calculate this. lifetime customer value, right? So I needed to kind of give you some of those numbers to shortcut it. And then I had to clarify it a few times because I'd given you some data and I could tell you weren't clear about whether it was included or excluded. And so again, I think if you had pushed to the insights early, you would have paid attention to that aspect of it a little bit more. But overall, I wouldn't say that not gathering that data was a key piece that was in here, right? And then this is the calculation that you did. I don't know what your paper looks like. You know, in an ideal scenario, you're tabling this out and it looks very clear. I felt like you didn't make any missteps in terms of mixing things up. So I would imagine that your notes are clear enough. And that's really all I care about, right? Clear enough is good enough as far as I'm concerned. When a model comes back to me, right, answering the question is good enough. Like perfection is not necessarily, I just need to not have errors or other dramas with it. And then this distinction in the second piece, I again kind of pushed you toward it and you picked it up really quickly, was that the rate we're assuming is going to be the same of 1.6% of the overall population purchasing, right? Yep. And that's, so whenever you hear an assumption like that, I'm just queuing you up to say, well, we're making that assumption, but what if that number is higher? Then that changes the game entirely. And so because that 20% and that 50% weren't off of the 3%, the 1.6 and the 0.8 stayed, and that's why it remains the same. Yeah. And the 20% and the 50% are really of the 8% in the first place. We could almost black those out in that box there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, any final questions before I turn it over to just a little bit of Q&A from the group?
No, I think I'm good for now. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciated it. I learned a lot. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Jensen, we love you. Great. So if anybody has questions about specific tactics or about the feedback that I gave, I would love to take those now. And I'd like to take the questions verbally. That will be a little bit easier for me. So if you can just quickly unmute yourself and ask your question, I can respond to it like that. Some of the questions also are often for Jensen, like, Jensen, how did you do that? Or how did you practice that? Or where are you in your practice process? I'm happy to take those too.
Hi, Jenny. I have a quick question.
Great, welcome.
Thank you, first of all, for organizing this. But can you quickly give a breakdown of the ideal times that Jensen should spend on each step of the process?
Yeah, love it. Yeah, so the first part, the opening, about 4 minutes. Again, he spent about 3.5. The prep for the structure, 2 minutes, and then the recap of the structure was 2 minutes. So his aggregate time there was pretty good, but it was unweighted. It was kind of like underweighted on the first part and overweighted on the second. Then in the middle of the case, I have a strong preference in a McKinsey-style case. You would spend about 5 minutes on a math question and 2 minutes on a creative question. So he spent 2 minutes on the specific creative question I asked him at the end of the case. But the math part took us, I think almost 17 or 18 minutes. That's not necessarily a fault of his. That's because in BCG, we have to collect the data as a part of that. And so, so that's again a little different just depending on the case type. The conclusion would be up to 2 minutes, about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. And so again, on almost all the pieces, he was super, super close. But I think that some of that insight level helps drive speed in a few of those other areas.
Okay, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Brad, go ahead.
Quick question. Thank you so much again. Following up on the math. So I've heard different people write, or in some case interviewers say mental math is super important. Like, for example, if we're taking 80% of 15, we want to do that in our head. Ideally, we wouldn't want to go and write that down and count the decimals on a piece of paper. What's your feedback, I guess, on Jensen's performance or suggestions moving forward for when we should be doing that mentally and when we should be able to take the time to kind of write that down, make sure that we don't make any small mistakes?
I love that. It's a good, better, best kind of situation. And so I really felt like Jensen was in the better category. I felt like his note-taking was super clear and his data was sufficient and correct, which is always more important to me than anything else. Also, you know, he was talking me through how those numbers went. So he wasn't like computing it in his head, but he was kind of in that middle category in terms of he was explaining it, which again, I would consider to be totally sufficient. If he had done the next level of math, I still wouldn't have changed my overall view of his performance, right? I wouldn't have been like, oh gosh, like Jensen is a math computer, so we can just look over those insight questions. So I want to make sure that we talk about the difference between what is top right? So in a final round, if Jensen was a little faster on the math, maybe it would have made a marginal difference, and what is critical. And so I wouldn't have said that his performance was negatively critical in any way today. But I think there is still room to grow to that kind of like next level of feeling super solid and being speedy on the math. I hope that's a clear distinction for you.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Okay, Fred, I see your hand up. Do you want to answer a question or ask a question?
I have 2 questions. First, the data aspect. You say this is BCG. Do you anticipate in the actual BCG virtual interview, that's the format it's going to be? In other words, the candidate is supposed to ask question.
That's right.
And then the interviewer would not give them any data in slide. They'd rather just talk out loud of the data, or there could be chart, there could be a table. What kind of format do you anticipate?
All of the formats above, but you're right that in a BCG format in general, I ask you what you want to look at and why. I was paying attention to what Jensen was curious about looking at, and I was also paying attention to whether or not he desired to quantify the problem, or whether he was just happy with the qualitative pieces. So one of the things that I did really like is that he started off with qualitative questions, but quickly got to quantitative. That was really powerful, and that was a moment when I was like, oh, I believe he would do a pretty good job, because that question, that third question, when he was like, I want to evaluate the value of this, that was the one that I was waiting for. It could have been a chart. I could have showed him a chart of this data instead of reading it out. It could have been a graph, a picture, not necessarily in this case. It would just have been a bar graph probably, but like there are certainly a lot of other cases. But in any situation before BCG reveals the data, they will usually have you explain in a few steps how you would get to it. And then after, let's call it 3 to 5 steps, if you're really floundering, they'll be like, oh, I have some data, and they'll take you there at that point.
Okay, my second question is with regard to this particular case. I thought that very early on, the case saying the profitability, right? They've been losing money. But at the end of this case, after analyzing the 2 different promotion and the sort of a customer lifetime value, I don't see how that connect to losing money. I'm sorry. I probably missed something in this particular specific
It's a great
case.
question. It doesn't. That was actually why I asked him the second question, which was, hey, like, is there anything else that we might be missing here? Because what we evaluated is actually the numbers were positive, right? We actually have a positive lifetime value of these customers. We have positive contributions in each one of the 3 years. And so there's probably something else that we are missing. And so I like that. That would also be a good way to conclude the case in the end, by really remembering that we have a problem that we're not addressing, and focus on that again. So you're right. Sometimes the math that we do doesn't solve the case, and that's good to keep an eye on that in the bigger picture. Good.
I'd love to ask a technical question, if I may.
Okay. I don't know. It depends on how technical it is.
I'm just curious, I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did. How did we get the $35 contribution rate for the alternate plan?
I had to give it to him, and I didn't up front. And so as he was beginning to calculate it, I realized that he was trying to take the ratio of the 8% to the 3% and try to see if there was some kind of difference in that number, because I didn't give it to him. He could have asked me for it, but I also probably should have just given it to him in the case. Sometimes I do. So again, these BCG cases are a little challenging from the interviewer's perspective, because they're quite fluid. So you have to remember like what somebody asked for, what they didn't ask for, and what they're using. And so you have to watch as they're doing the math to see where they're struggling to weigh in for them.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So in terms of qualitative versus quantitative, the quantitative component shows that there are positive contributions. So then would it make sense in that case to move more toward a qualitative approach, looking at essentially who you're marketing? And so you had given some demographic data about the 8% that you were reaching. Would it make sense at that in terms of an insight perspective to ask who the other 92% are that you aren't reaching with this promotion? And if essentially there's some way you could just broaden your target base at this point.
Yeah, and actually one of the pieces of data that I shared at the beginning is that the way that we're getting emails is through social media promotions, right? And so Jensen didn't ask about this. This was a data point that I showed toward the end of the case. And those kind of context questions can absolutely be layered on later. I want to make sure that we draw back to the fact that I felt like Jensen did a good job of answering the question. So there are probably 50 other things that we absolutely could have done. But again, I don't know that any of them would have made a major change in the insight. So yeah, I think that the big takeaway is that if this isn't the problem, something else is what we need to look at. So like you mentioned, that's one direction that we could go there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Hey, Jenny, I just had a question about like the contextual points of information.
Okay.
So like one thing I thought that Jensen did really great was he asked about the demographics of who we're actually selling to, but that actually wasn't something in my framework because we're kind of dealing with profitability and like figuring out whether we're working with like the same customers or new customers. And so I'm wondering like if you kind of don't probe for those extra qualitative details, but those aren't really integral to driving the case forward. Is it just like a bonus points thing where like if you do, then that's the best scenario, but if you don't, then that's fine?
So I actually don't think that that added a lot of value to his case to probe for that. And it wasn't, as far as my like messy recap of his structure, it wasn't actually in his initial structure either. That I think was a weakness because again, if we're very insights driven, the structure itself is going to be incredibly linear with what he then goes and asks for. And then also what we use to solve the case. And so like in this case, Jensen, I would say for you, if you go back and restructure the beginning of your case and do that 2 or 3 times to be a little bit more comprehensive, I think you could come up with that data. So just to answer your question, like it's not bonus points actually, especially because what I really care about first is let's get to the math. It's only bonus points later if we start to really probe into, hey, what are the challenges? So if we had moved the math part up a little bit, taken not 3 steps, but 1 or 2, to get there, gone a little bit more directionally linear inside the math and left a little bit more time for that creative question at the end, then I would have added potentially some more of that contextual information in there. I hope that's helpful.
So you really want your structure to kind of drive those contextual questions and only ask them where your structure points to it.
Yeah, you know, one of the faults of the structure is that he didn't use it. And in a BCG case, I want to see you actually like point by point walking through your structure. That's why I've asked you to build a structure. And in a McKinsey case, you kind of get a little lazy because for McKinsey, they're like, thanks for your structure. We don't care. We're moving on to something else. And so, so there is a nuance in the difference of the way that you have to use your structure. When we're training folks, we actually try to do both. So that you have to use your structure sometimes, and then you also are flexible at leaving your structure behind if you need to.
Got it. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Pleasure.
Hey, Jenny.
Good. I have time for just a couple more questions, and some of the other folks on my team will take questions after that. So
okay.
Yeah,
hey, Jenny. Just quickly to follow up with Jeffrey's question. So in previously in-person interview, we are able to show the interviewer our notes to walk through the framework and structure.
Yeah.
And versus the SMBCC case, they have a lot of data. They will actually show you the slides, and then you can do the calculation. Yeah. But now it's all happen virtually. How is that going to?
Yeah, they can absolutely do. They can share a screen with a slide on it, and so you will still get some visuals, charts, graphs, etc. through slides.
But how about if we want to show our framework?
You can't do that. So it's only from their side. Yeah, so you can receive, but you can't send. At least you can't in a fluid way that makes sense do that. You're just gonna have to compensate or overcompensate with the data that you're reading out, which is why I pointed out to Jensen at the beginning that I wanted more very clear buckets in his structure and then very clear data points. I wanted them numbered. When he said that he wanted to look at the target market, I wanted that to be data point number 1. And then I wanted him to go second to the Europe versus US breakdown of sales, right? I wanted them to be incredibly distinct when he was verbally explaining them so that I could visualize how clear his paper was.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hi, Jen. Okay. I have one really quick question.
Great.
It's okay with you. Would we need to reweight? I'm looking at the math that you had provided. Will we need to reweight for the 3% conversion and after the 8%? Because I'm looking at the numbers and it looks like for years 2 and 3, you have the same overall response rate.
Yeah, so I had said in the prompt that the number remains the same, which means that we wouldn't reweight it. And then I had to explain that to him. And I said in my table afterwards that I probably could have laid that out in a little bit more of a clear way, because you really don't use the 20 and the 50% anymore in the second one. You just use the 1.6 and the 0.8 from the first problem. And that's intentional to try to streamline the insight and really make it focused on what happens in the first year, not only difference, and also to make what are assumptions that we often would make in consulting, which is like, we can just change one thing and everything else stays the same. And again, I wanted Jensen to call that out and be like, actually, it might not be reasonable that everything else would stay the same. It's quite likely that we would have differentiation in what would happen in future years. And then that would have been a good discussion for us to have.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Hey everyone, I've got to run because I have another meeting that I need to go to. Naman Mian, who is on the call, Naman, you want to say hi to everybody? Is going to take just a few more minutes of questions so that you have them. We are going to put this case up on our podcast at Strategy Simplified. If you haven't taken a look at the podcast, we've got cases like this up there already, and we have more coming. I just want to make sure that before I leave, I say one massive final thank you to Jensen. Jensen, we so appreciate you joining us today. You were amazing, and we know that you're going to be successful, so we're excited to walk with you through that process. And if anybody else wants to throw their hand up for a future case and wants to participate with us, we do like to kind of make sure that you're in a place where you've got some good insights that you're able to share, some good math, and we really felt like Jensen was ready to go through the trial today. So reach out to us. You can put your details in the chat bar if you're interested in being on a future session and doing a live case with us. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. And like I said, Naman will stay on for just a few extra minutes to help you guys.
Hey, everybody. This is Naman. It's good to see some familiar faces and names on here. I was not on the session today, so I am not familiar with the case that Jensen went through. So if you have case-specific questions for Jensen, if he's willing to stick around, you can ask those. But if you have broader questions about case prep, networking, resumes, fit interviews, the recruiting process, firms, literally anything's fair game. I've got about 9 minutes here, and I'm just happy to answer questions. So just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi, this is Abby.
Hey, Abby.
Can you talk a bit about if we're looking for some resume assistance quickly, is it possible to do that right away and then jump on to Black Belt or another program?
Absolutely, Abby. The quickest way to get resume assistance is through what we call a power half hour. And it's a 30-minute coaching session with a member of our team, and we'll go through and we'll do a review of your resume. Now, it's not an edit. We don't have time to do an edit, but we'll rework key bullet points and we'll leave them as examples for you to then rework the rest and give you an idea of the kind of metrics and input that firms are looking for from you. And then you can go ahead and rework the rest. And then when you upgrade to Black Belt, it'll be that much better for us because Black Belt includes an edit. So if you're looking for something quick to really take your resume from a C to a B before a networking encounter or an info session or anything like that, a power half hour is the way to go.
Okay, and then if you jump to Black Belt right away, then how quickly could that happen? Or if I signed up for Black Belt right away, how quickly could you get a full review?
Yep. So if you sign up for Black Belt and send us your resume, our typical turnaround time is 3 to 4 business days per round, especially at this time of year. But you have the option to add an expedited emergency edit to your package. That'll just bump you up to the top of our queue, and you'll get each round back in 24 hours. So if you're in urgent need of an edit, then we can get something back to you in as little as 24 hours.
Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. So Abby, thanks for that question. Anybody else on resumes, networking, case prep?
I actually have one question.
Yes.
So could you briefly state what is the difference about the interview process or the case that was used by the 3 different MBB firms?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jensen went through a BCG-style case, which is very interviewee-led, right? It's choose your own adventure. You have to go gather the data yourself. The type of case that we recommend you begin with as you're starting your prep, no matter what firms you're preparing for. Right. And so, and inside of their frameworks, BCG values creativity above all else, right? More than McKinsey, more than Bain, right? And so that is an interviewee-led style case. McKinsey is interviewer-led. Jenny Ray mentioned this at the end of the call, right? You can build your structure and you can say, here's what I want to look at first. And McKinsey's going to say, thanks, but no thanks. Here's what we want you to do next, right? And so there, your structure doesn't matter as much. What matters is being structured and organized throughout the case, right? Structured in your brainstorming, structured in your math, et cetera. And then Bain is a mix of the two. It's more interviewee-led than McKinsey, but not as interviewee-led as BCG. And the one thing that they prize in their frameworks more than McKinsey and BCG do is practicality. So you really want to think about, if I was a manager on this project and I was assigning out work streams, right? And I was going to assign out 4 to 5 work streams to my analysts, what would I want them to look at? And that's the kind of structure and framework that Bain is looking for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I am actually currently applying with Bain, and I do have a little, I do wonder if you could explain a little bit more in detail about Bain's interview process.
Yeah, so if you're looking for, I think there's some feedback here. If you're looking for the structure of the interview process, tell me this: are you an experienced hire? Are you coming out of an educational background? Where, what level are you at right now?
I am actually graduating from a PhD program by the end of this year, but I don't. I do have some internship experiences, but not really a lot of full-time experiences.
Okay, so if you're graduating by the end of this year, then you can only recruit for full-time. And so here's what Bain's process is going to look like for you. It's going to look like a round 0, 30-minute phone screen, 20 minutes fit, right? 10 to 15 minutes market sizing, potentially. That's going to be your phone screener. You're going to have a round 1 with 2 to 3 case interviews. And 1 to 2, one of those case interview kind of rounds will have a fit interview involved with it. And then you'll have a dedicated fit interview as well in round 1. And then you can expect that to be replicated in round 2. So, you'll go through multiple cases and multiple iterations of a fit interview in each round before you hopefully accept the offer. So that's how the process is structured. And I'll have someone from our team pop in a link to our Bain firm profile where we lay it out in a lot more detail, just what you can expect in each round and what you're going to get. But high level, that's what you can expect.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rita.
Hi, so I have a question in terms of performance for, different levels. So for example, I'm a post-MBA applying as an experienced hire. Does my performance necessarily have to be, better in some way as, say, someone that's pre-MBA?
No. What they're expecting from you is not necessarily better math or any kind of quantitative performance. They are expecting better communication from you because you're going to be in a client-facing role much sooner, or you're going to expect it to carry that weight a lot sooner. And then on your resume, they're looking for more leadership ability and evidence that you can either learn how to sell and that you have client management experience. That's what they're looking for from more senior folks as opposed to junior folks. But the criteria isn't different. They're just looking for a little bit of a different skill set.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question, Aman.
Yes. Hi.
Yes, I'm currently in my, studying for I'm in my MBA program. While in the program and being a student and applying to one of the consulting firms, is it advisable, or in general, would you say it's better to graduate first and then go into it? What do you have to say about that sort of transition or the timing on applying?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to maximize your chances if you apply as a student through any kind of on-campus recruiting that the firm is running. So, as an experienced hire, right, there are no set deadlines. There's not really a formalized process for that. It's really dependent on your networking performance if you can get an interview as an experienced hire. And after you graduate, that's how the firms treat you. So whatever you can do to get in on applying and recruiting while you're in your MBA program, that's going to maximize your chances.
Fantastic. I'll put the pedal to the metal. Thank you.
Right. Yep, you're welcome.
Hi, I actually have another question.
Sure.
So what I heard from the Bain's, the recruiter from Bain, is that they have hired too much intern this summer, and what is possible is that the position, the job openings for the full-time consultant is going to be a little bit tighter than usual. And so what they said is that I can still apply for their internship program next year. But the thing is that if I graduate this year, by the end of this year, and then I apply for the internship program in the next year, there's just going to be about 2 months in between. So how do I like improve on my resume or cover letter?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just rephrase this. You're asking, how can I quickly add more relevant experience to my resume? Is that really the gist of it?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, great. Let me just preface this by saying you're absolutely right. You said, maybe full-time spots are going to be more restricted at Bain and other firms this fall. That's been confirmed. The firms had their largest intake of interns ever this past summer. And so COVID or not, full-time spots were going to be more restricted this fall. Now with the firms extending more return offers to interns and a higher take rate from those interns because opportunities outside of consulting are less, there really is going to be more competition for full-time spots this fall. So I just wanted to make that clear for everybody, not to scare you, but just to know, right, it's going to be more competitive. So start to prepare now. Now, Lou, to answer your question specifically, how can you quickly add more relevant experience to your resume? I would recommend building your own consulting project. And here's what I mean by that. Find a small local business, find 2, 3, 4 of them. They're everywhere, everyone needs help right now, and ask them, can I answer a market sizing question for you or a market entry question for you, right? Those kinds of questions and projects require little to no proprietary data. You're examining the external market and provide really, really great insights for businesses that either don't know how to do it or don't have the bandwidth to do it. And so, it could be, are you interested in expanding to, to the next city, right? Can I size the market for you in that city? And if they say yes, say, okay, great, it's going to be a 1-week engagement. I'm going to go away. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to make the assumptions. And then I'm going to come back and tell you in a week if that's a viable option for you to expand into, and I'll, size the market in 3 other cities and stack rank them for you, right? That kind of project that shows relevant skills. It's for a real client. You're managing the relationship and you're doing the kind of work that you do as a consulting analyst. That's a quick and easy way for you to add experience to your resume. And you don't have to be paid for it. The firms don't really care about that. They care that the experience is relevant, that you're building the right skills. And a project like that does that. We run similar projects here at Management Consulted. We call that strategy sprint, where for 1 week, you're working in a team of 5 on a strategy and growth oriented project for a client that we've sourced for you. And your project leader is an MBB coach from our team, right? And so we provide and facilitate those opportunities. Our next project is happening January 11th to the 15th. And so if anybody's interested, there's more information on the website. We've got a wait list going right now. But if that timing doesn't work for you, or if you don't want to pay to have that experience, then you can go create a similar experience on your own.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've got another 3 minutes. John, I see you get your hand up. How can I help?
Back to, from an experience, industry experienced and to some extent experienced consultant standpoint, re-entering this realm, how do you focus your industry experience versus positioning for just broader, if you are interested in going cross industries? Most of my experience has been in energy and utilities, but I think it's applicable to so many other areas as well.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. It just means that you reorient the way you talk about your experience, both in networking encounters and on the resume, to emphasize your skills and your results, and less your kind of industry specific knowledge or insight or subject matter expertise. Okay. So we're gonna change the way we talk about what you've done, and we're gonna emphasize different things than if we were applying for an energy consulting firm down in Houston. And so what I can do is, if you want to shoot me an email, John, I can send you a couple of templates that we have that can help you get started. It's difficult for me to, I understand that's a broad answer. And if we had time to kind of go through your resume line by line, or for, at least for a couple bullet points, I could show you how I would reword that experience. So if you want to shoot an email, I'm happy to send you some templates and get you started.
Sounds good. And then the core, so somebody asked earlier, you say you really want to focus on leadership selling ability, mentorship, and then if you're focused on the industry, the industry or subject matter expertise.
Yep, you're absolutely right. The other thing that you do still want to focus on is your analytical chops, which I'm sure that you have. But yeah, your analysis, team leadership, budget management, stakeholder management, right? At more senior levels, if you have a little bit of that sales experience, it helps. It's one of the few skills that firms don't train you on. They don't train you how to sell and they don't train you how to write. And so that's why the cover letter exists. It's a writing sample because it's just one thing they won't train you on.
And what's your email?
I just popped it in the chat bar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, John.
All right. Would you mind sharing that with me as well?
Yep.
Exactly.
I just popped it in the chat bar, so it should be visible to everybody.
Okay. The templates, though, like you'd be willing to do the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to just shoot me an email, we can share them. We can post them with a recording. We'll figure something out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Naman. I'm a rising junior undergrad. I was wondering, just want to make sure, I haven't seen this before, but for the big 3 interview processes, the written case interview only applies really to full-time hires, right? So I'll just be getting kind of short 30-minute, 45-minute case interviews, just like the ones we did today.
That's what we expect. And I'm smiling because all bets are off this cycle. And written case interviews make a lot more sense in this virtual environment. But from what we've seen, they're really kind of more limited to MBA and other populations, not necessarily undergrad. And so I would be familiar with what one is, but I wouldn't necessarily spend any time preparing for one right now. If you do see one, it's going to be in final rounds, but I wouldn't expect you to, you're right.
Got it. And then I come from a non-target and I've been doing some networking, so I think I have a good shot at getting an interview because I've had some good relationships with the offices. But what advice do you have for me to kind of stand out in the interview process once I get there, besides just over preparing and hoping that everything kind of works out for the best?
Yeah, it's everything we've talked about today, because once you're in the interview process, right, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter that you're from a non-target. It doesn't matter what your GPA is, anything else. Right, the process starts over and you're evaluated against everybody else in that interview process, and they'll pick the best person. So once you're in the interview process, right, it's blind to your background and your experience.
Got it. So you would just suggest keep reading case studies, keep doing live practice, and
absolutely. Here's what I would suggest as far as kind of like a high-level prep plan is watch, if you're at the beginning of the process, which it sounds like you're not, but I'll lay this out for everybody on the call. Watch a couple of the case walkthrough videos we have on the site, right? And you already got one here with Jensen. And then go do 3 to 5 cases on your own if you're at the very beginning. Once you've read through 3 to 5 cases, you're ready for live practice. You don't need any more than that. That's really going to make the difference between success and failure is live practice, because as everyone saw today, this is a verbal test just as much as a mental one, right? And so practicing and talking out loud as you're working through a case is critical to your success and to being prepared for what the interview environment's going to be like. So once you start practicing out loud, if you've got peers or friends at the firms who can give you good feedback, fantastic. If not, work with an expert early to have them tell you, okay, right, out of these 8 parts of a case, these are the 3 that are really going to stop you from moving on to final rounds, right? And again, right, maybe it was an issue today with math, or maybe it'd be an issue with, you know what, your structure was level 1, but I'd really want you to push a little bit deeper. Here's what I would do to take that to a level 2 or a level 3 structure. Here are the extra categories I would have wanted to see. That wasn't quite me-see. Whatever the case may be, get someone to quickly tell you, here are your issue areas. And then go do drill-based practice on those areas, right? If it's math, then go do specific math drills, right? Word problem, like verbal math problems or graphs or charts. If it's structure, just go do case starts over and over again for an hour and really drill down on those kind of key issue areas for you. And then once you've done, right, 2 to 3 hours of prep on those key issue areas, then you can reconstruct the case and start running through full mocks again. You're really going to accelerate your progress that way. And that's the most efficient, strategic, and best way I can advise anybody to prepare.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much, Naman.
You're welcome.
Hey, Naman, do you still have more time?
I've got 1 minute, and then I really actually have to run to my next appointment. So yes, last question.
Okay, super good question. So you were talking about BCG cases really about your structure. So what if your structure doesn't really align with all the data the interviewer actually has? what's going to happen then? You ask a question about, can I get these piece of data? But they don't really have it. How's the interview gonna go?
Yeah, they're gonna say what else, right? And so they may make something up and run you down a rabbit trail and see how quickly you can figure out that this is a dead end. So that may happen. So you have to be alert during the case and be like, okay, kind of the filter you run everything through when you're asking questions is this going to help me answer the question that I was asked at the beginning, right?
Okay.
And so that's the filter you're going to run everything through. But they'll just say, you know what, I don't have that data, or they'll give you some wrong information, wait for you to come back, and they'll wait for you to ask the right question, right? That's why BCG cases are so tough.
Okay, so if they don't have that piece of data, you can just say, okay, let's move on to the next category or the next point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you're really off, you may have to rework your structure on the fly and be like, okay, it's obvious that I thought about this from a different perspective, right? No big deal, right? You can't like get flustered. You just have to say, you know what? In that case, I would want to look at X, Y, and Z. So can we start here? And see if you're hitting the mark with that kind of revamped structure. But you may have to rebuild that on the fly if that's a situation you run into.
Okay, sounds good. Very, very good insight. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Shen. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for hanging out for an extra 30 minutes. You all are our kind of people if you're going to hang out for an extra 30 minutes talking about consulting and cases. So we're going to go ahead and process this recording, and we'll send it out to you as soon as possible. Write us at team@managementconsulting.com, or I posted my email in the chat bar. Write me directly. We're happy to help how we can. But other than that, best of luck this interview season. And those of you that are in Black Belt, we will see you next week.